Inside the farmhouse kitchen is bathed in the golden glow of a single overhead light, casting long shadows against the wooden walls. The air carries the comforting aroma of freshly baked bread and simmering stew, wrapping the space in a warm embrace against the cold vastness of the outside world. Margaret, a woman in her late 30s, stirs the pot absent-mindedly, her mind half occupied with the quiet of the evening. Across the wooden table, Lucy, a curious 12-year-old, sits hunched over her notebook, the soft scratch of her pencil filling the silence. The farmhouse, secluded and peaceful, has always been their haven, until tonight. Margaret turns, wiping her hands on her apron. A gentle smile playing on her lips. Margaret, smiling, finish up, Lucy. Dinner's almost ready. Lucy doesn't respond immediately. She's been staring out the window for a while now, her pencil paused mid-sentence, her mind seemingly lost somewhere far beyond the confines of their small home. Lucy, quietly, Mom, do you think there are other beings out there, in space? Margaret pauses. The question, so sudden yet so familiar, lingers in the air. Chuckles, a light, fleeting sound. Margaret, why do you ask? Lucy finally turns to her, her wide brown eyes reflecting something unspoken, an unease, a whisper of something unknown. Lucy, I don't know. Just. Sometimes. I feel like we're not alone. Something's watching. Margaret's fingers tighten around the wooden spoon. The fire in the stove crackles softly, filling the space with a reassuring warmth. Margaret, softly, well, the universe is vast. Anything's possible. Lucy doesn't seem convinced. She glances back toward the window, her fingers idly tapping against the table. Outside, the sky is a velvet canvas speckled with cold, distant stars, stretching endlessly beyond their understanding, but something else lurks out there, watching, waiting. Margaret whispers, stay here, Lucy. Lucy grips the armrest of her chair, her small fingers white with tension. Lucy, Mom, don't go out there. But Margaret has already moved. She steps onto the wooden porch, the cool night air wrapping around her like an unfamiliar presence. The brightness forces her to shield her eyes, but she refuses to look away. The object hovers dead silent, impossibly still. Then, for the briefest moment, it shifts, not like an aircraft, not like anything Margaret has ever seen. It moves like a thought, like an instinct, seamless, smooth, deliberate, and then, it stops. Margaret's heartbeat pounds against her ribs, a creeping sensation prickles at the back of her neck. Something inside the craft is watching her. From the window, Lucy watches in horror, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucy, Mom, be careful. And then, without warning, the craft shoots upward, vanishing into the darkness. A streak of light burns across the sky for a fleeting second before the night swallows it whole. Margaret staggers back, her breath ragged. She turns toward the house, her face pale. Lucy's eyes are wide with fear. Margaret, breathless, what on earth was that? But deep down, she already knows. Something has just marked them, and it will return. Margaret whispers, stay here, Lucy. Lucy grips the armrest of her chair, her small fingers white with tension. Lucy, Mom, don't go out there. But Margaret has already moved. She steps onto the wooden porch, the cool night air wrapping around her like an unfamiliar presence. The brightness forces her to shield her eyes, but she refuses to look away. The object hovers dead silent, impossibly still. Then, for the briefest moment, it shifts, not like an aircraft, not like anything Margaret has ever seen. It moves like a thought, like an instinct, seamless, smooth, deliberate, and then, it stops. Margaret's heartbeat pounds against her ribs, a creeping sensation prickles at the back of her neck. Something inside the craft is watching her. From the window, Lucy watches in horror, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucy, Mom, be careful. And then, without warning, the craft shoots upward, vanishing into the darkness. A streak of light burns across the sky for a fleeting second before the night swallows it whole. Margaret staggers back, her breath ragged. She turns toward the house, her face pale. Lucy's eyes are wide with fear. Margaret, breathless, what on earth was that? But deep down, she already knows. Something has just marked them, and it will return. The beings, Marilyn's grip on her mother's arm tightens, her fingers digging into Mildred's skin. Her breathing is shallow, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Marilyn whispers, Mom. What is that? The object, still hovering in eerie silence, begins to shift. The metallic surface shimmers, reflecting the crimson glow of its own light. Then, 3 rectangular windows emerge, as if forming out of the very structure of the craft itself. Inside those windows, shadows move. Against the pale yellow glow, 3 humanoid figures stand motionless. Their elongated heads tilt slightly, as though observing, studying. Their forms are vaguely human, but not quite. Their limbs are too slender. Their movements too controlled, too unnatural. A strange, static-like hum fills the air, pressing down on them. The air feels thick, heavy, as if something unseen is pressing against their skin, trying to seep into their very minds. Mildred's voice barely escapes her lips, barely more than a breath. "Mildred, they're looking at us." The words send a chill through Marilyn's spine. A deep, primal fear takes hold of her, the kind of fear that whispers from an ancient part of the brain, the kind that warns of a predator watching from the dark. Marilyn. Panicking. "What do we do?" Mildred swallows hard. Instinct kicks in. Light. The cabin light. Without another thought, she lunges for the switch and flips it off. Instantly, the UFO's lights vanish, darkness engulfs them. The once blinding craft now melts into the night, a formless black mass hanging over the dock like a phantom. Silence. But the feeling of being watched does not disappear. The irresistible urge, a stillness settles in the cabin, but something is wrong. Mildred stands completely still, her hands limp at her sides. Her breathing slows. Her eyes glaze over. A pulse, subtle, almost imperceptible, seems to resonate through the walls, through the air, through her very body. A whisper, though silent, echoes inside her mind, a command, an invitation. Mildred takes a step toward the door. Mildred, dazed. I need to go." Marilyn's stomach drops. Marilyn grabs her. "Mom." "No." But Mildred is already moving. She unlocks the door with unnatural ease, her hand twisting the knob as if compelled by something unseen. The door creaks open. A gust of cold night air rushes in. Then, she runs. Marilyn's heart pounds violently as she watches in horror. Her mother, her protector, is suddenly not herself. She moves like a puppet, drawn forward by invisible strings. Marilyn, screaming, "Moan, stop!" Mildred does not stop. She runs straight toward the dock, toward the thing waiting above. Her figure becomes smaller, swallowed by the night, and then, the craft moves. The sudden departure, the hovering object, which had remained eerily still, suddenly shudders to life. A low-frequency hum reverberates through the air, rattling the windows of the cabin. The wooden planks of the dock creak and groan as if buckling under an unseen force. The red glow returns, pulsing faintly, illuminating the water below in an unnatural shimmer. The reflections dance, distorted, alive. Mildred halts mid-step. The trance breaks. Her body staggers, as if waking from a deep sleep. Her breath catches in her throat. She looks up, her eyes widening. The craft rises, slow at first, then faster. It tilts slightly, like a predator deciding against the kill, before shooting upward into the sky with impossible speed. A sonic crackle ripples through the air. The light disappears in an instant, and just like that, the night is silent once more. Mildred stands frozen, gasping for breath. Then, her knees buckle, and she collapses. Marilyn races to her, throwing herself onto the ground beside her mother. Marilyn, frantic, "Mom! Mom, are you okay?" Mildred's hands tremble violently. Her skin is cold. Her eyes are wide, unblinking. Mildred whispers, "What just happened?" Marilyn wraps her arms around her, holding her close. The lake stretches before them, dark and undisturbed, as if nothing had ever happened. But Marilyn knows, something was here, something was watching, and somehow, she feels it isn't over. The sheriff arrives. The morning sun casts long shadows over the quiet landscape. A soft mist clings to the lake, curling around the dock like ghostly fingers. The world feels still, almost too still, as if the night before had never happened. But Marilyn and Mildred know better. Sheriff Tom, 50s, a broad-shouldered man with graying hair, stands by the dock, his hands resting on his belt. His boots make a faint creaking sound against the wooden planks as he shifts his weight. He scratches his head, looking out over the water. Sheriff Tom, raising an eyebrow, "A UFO, you say?" Mildred, still visibly shaken, crosses her arms tightly. Her fingers dig into her own skin. The fear hasn't left her, it lingers deep in her chest, like a weight that won't lift. Mildred, firmly, "We both saw it, Sheriff." It wasn't an airplane. It was watching us. Sheriff Tom exhales slowly, his weathered face unreadable. He's been in this town long enough to hear plenty of strange stories, but this one feels different. Marilyn, standing beside her mother, speaks up. Marilyn, urgently, and when we turned off our lights, its lights turned off too. The sheriff narrows his eyes slightly and looks at the dock, as if searching for something, some sign of truth, something tangible beyond words. Then, he turns his gaze to the sky, where the morning sun now shines innocently, as if it had no knowledge of the terror that had unfolded beneath it. A long pause, then, Sheriff Tom sighs, "I'll make a report. But don't expect much." His voice holds a weight to it, not skepticism, but resignation. He knows how these things go. Reports get filed, and then forgotten. Mildred and Marilyn exchange a glance. They already sense the truth. No one will believe them. The government agents, the wind whispers softly through the trees, rustling the leaves in hushed voices. Days have passed, but the unease still lingers in the air. The house feels different, as if something invisible now stands in the corners of the rooms, listening. Then, a knock at the door. It is firm, precise, too official. Mildred hesitates before opening it. Standing before her are two men in dark suits. They are almost identical, both tall, both with short, neatly combed hair, both with expressionless faces. Agent Smith, the one on the left, adjusts his tie. His voice is calm, but cold. "Agent Smith, Mrs. Anderson, we'd like to ask you and your daughter a few questions." Mildred grips the doorframe. Something about them feels wrong, not in what they say, but in how they say it. They already know the answers. Mildred, suspicious. "Why is the government interested?" The second man, Agent Davis, tilts his head slightly. His expression does not change. "Agent Davis, just a routine inquiry, ma'am, routine." But this isn't routine. Still, Mildred steps aside, letting them in. The agents sit at the kitchen table, a stark contrast to the warmth of the farmhouse. They ask calm, methodical questions, their voices even, too controlled. Then, they slide a blank piece of paper across the table. "Agent Smith, can you draw what you saw?" Mildred and Marilyn glance at each other. This isn't just a routine visit. Slowly, Mildred picks up a pencil. She begins to sketch. The shape of the craft, the three windows, the figures inside. The paper feels thin, fragile beneath her fingertips. The agents watch intently but say nothing. After a long silence, they stand, without looking at each other. Without whispering a word, they move toward the door. But just before stepping outside, Agent Smith turns. His voice is calm. "Agent Smith, it's best if you don't discuss this incident with anyone." A chill moves through the room. Mildred's stomach twists. "Mildred, slowly, are we in danger?" A pause. Then, Agent Davis finally smiles. But it's not comforting. It's not friendly. It's the kind of smile that says, "You don't want to know." "Agent Davis, just a precaution, ma'am." And then, they are gone. The sound of a car engine fades into the distance. Marilyn stands frozen, staring at the door. The house feels colder. Marilyn whispers, "Mom." They knew. Mildred doesn't answer. Because she knows it too. Scene 8, the dog's warning. The road stretches endlessly ahead, swallowed by the darkness of the rural countryside. The only light comes from the car's headlights, cutting through the thick night. The tires hum against the asphalt, a steady rhythm that fills the silence inside the vehicle. Kenneth Anderson, his hands gripping the steering wheel, drives with the quiet focus of someone too used to the emptiness of these roads. Mildred sits beside him, her gaze lost in the window. The children, Marilyn and her younger brother Dwayne, sit in the back, their bodies lulled by the soft vibrations of the car. All is quiet, until Zipper growls. The sound is low at first, a rumbling deep in the dog's chest. Then it grows sharper, a warning. Kenneth frowns and glances at the rearview mirror. "Kenneth," calmly, "what's wrong?" "Zipper." The dog's ears are rigid, its eyes locked on something outside. The hair along its back rises. Then, Marilyn sees it, a glow, soft at first, a green, pulsing light. It moves just beyond the trees, keeping perfect pace with their car. It is silent. Unnaturally silent. Her breath catches in her throat. Marilyn whispers, "Dad." "Look." Kenneth follows her gaze. His face, usually so steady, falters. There, just beyond the road, something moves. A green, luminous object, smooth, impossibly sleek, hovers just above the ground. Its glow pulses, casting shifting shadows through the trees. It follows them, matching their speed. Watching, Mildred's hand tightens over her chest, zipper winds, tucking its tail between its legs. The air inside the car feels heavier, colder. Then, the object shifts, it glides closer to the road, drifting into full view. The light is not just green, it has an almost liquid quality, a glow that seems to move like mist, shifting between deep emerald and sickly yellow-green, and it is getting closer. The second encounter, the car slows. Kenneth's foot hovers over the brake. The luminous object, now fully in their view, tilts slightly. The Anderson family watches in silent horror as it moves parallel to their vehicle, mere feet away. No noise. No engine. Just gliding. The green light washes over the car, casting long, shifting shadows inside. The radio, though previously off, crackles with static. The temperature plummets. Dwayne, gripping the seat in front of him, leans toward the window. Dwayne whispers, "It's the same thing Mom and Marilyn saw." The craft drifts toward an open patch of land, hovering just above the ground. Then, as if deciding something, it tilts. And moves, faster than anything should be able to. It sweeps over the clearing, curves into a half-circle motion, and then, disappears. Not like a plane flying away. Not like a bird darting into the night. It vanishes, melting into the darkness as though it was never there. A deep, empty silence follows. Inside the car, no one speaks. Mildred's hands tremble as she grips the dashboard. Her voice is barely more than a whisper. "Mildred, it's following us." Marilyn swallows hard, eyes still locked on the empty space where the object had been. She knows it isn't gone, it's waiting. The final warning, the days that followed felt hollow, stretched too thin, as if time itself had been altered by what they had seen. The house remained the same creaking floors, the same worn-out furniture, the same wind howling through the trees. But something was different. It wasn't the house that had changed, it was them. Then, the letter arrived. It was plain, unmarked. No return address. No stamp. Just a folded envelope, tucked neatly between the other mail. Mildred's hands trembled slightly as she picked it up, the paper cool against her fingertips. Something about it felt wrong. She carefully peeled it open, her breath hitching as she unfolded the single sheet inside. One sentence, a simple command: "Forget what you saw. For your safety." The words felt heavy, as if they carried more weight than ink and paper should allow. Marilyn stood behind her, her eyes darting over the words. A deep chill settled into her bones. Marilyn whispers, "Mom. What if they come back?" The silence in the room was thick, pressing down on them like an invisible force. The question lingered, unanswered, because they both knew, it wasn't a question of if, it was a question of when. Mildred slowly folded the letter back into the envelope, her fingers tightening around the edges. Then, she pulled Marilyn into a tight embrace. Her voice was steady, but low. "Resolute, Mildred, then we'll be ready." Marilyn buried her face in her mother's shoulder, the warmth of her presence the only thing keeping the fear at bay. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling through the trees with a whispering hiss. And above them, high in the sky where no one was looking, a faint, eerie glow flickered in the darkness. Watching. Waiting. The Anderson family's encounter remains one of the most chilling UFO cases ever documented. To this day, no official explanation has been given. Do you believe in extraterrestrial visitors? Let us know in the comments.